Welcome to the SuperPumped podcast. I'm your host, Ben Walters, and I'm joined by my friend, Jay DeFazio. Welcome, Jay.
Thanks, Ben.
Jay has recently written a book called You Only Live Twice, a memoir in two genders. And so this is our third recorded interview. I could do many more, but we're going to cut it off at 3 because we have other topics to cover. But this has been just fascinating. And since we last met, I've actually had the opportunity to read the book. And I was, I'm not sure. I'm not a big reader to begin with. And I wasn't sure quite what to expect, Jay. But this was a page turner of a read. I remember when you told me a few months ago when you were working with your editors that you were going to have to put a disclaimer in the book. And I was a little intrigued by that. But some of those later chapters were pretty heavy, pretty salacious, some of the things you wrote about. So I want to say thank you for laying all of it out there. That had to take a lot of courage. So I appreciate that. And I know talking to other people that we know that have been reading the book, they can't put it down. So thank you for that. Yeah. A friend of mine, he talks about how the best authors lay their soul bare as part of their work. And it really felt like you did that.
Yeah, for sure. And the payoff, I hope, is that, one, that people will read it, because my fear in the beginning was it's a lot of negative stuff for
sure,
rough stuff that somebody would not read it. They would put it down and be like, okay, this is depressing.
Too heavy.
So yeah, that was my first fear.
Right.
And then secondly, I just want people to know that when you are in a bad spot, it doesn't last forever. So that's what I got from kind of going back and writing this, is seeing that, like, man, life is just the ups and downs.
And everybody can relate to that. Really.
Right. And I think, I tell people the only thing guaranteed is change. That's the only guarantee we have.
Right.
So if something is crappy or difficult, I mean, there may not be a solution, but eventually something is going to shift.
Okay.
So, a lot of good things can come out of that. So, but it's all just rolling with the punches. So
yeah,
that's really why I wanted to put it out there.
Well, and I wanted to dig in a little bit today because Jay broke that it was really a memoir in two genders, but it was broken into 4 parts. And I thought that was really clever on your part. The first one was, who am I? The second one was, I am mom. And your kind of identity was wrapped up in the mom thing. And then probably why the disclaimer part is part 3, where it's, I am broken. And boy, you went down some dark places during that time. And then the final part was, I am Jay. But what struck me about the I am broken portion was it seemed like in your life, you vacillated between clinging to religion as kind of the answer to a lot of broken, hard edges in your life, as well as clinging to substances and kind of self-medication, and neither seemed to be able to help you cope through that. So I was struck by that speaks to so many of us in our brokenness, for whatever reason, go in one of those two directions. And I didn't expect this to be such a spiritual quest. Do you want to say more about, because I mean, you were, for those who haven't read the book, Jay was going to confession and mass every single day. He was praying the rosary. He was doing, like way above and beyond normal, just every Sunday type of Christianity. This was like over the top. Even this is coming from a pastor too. So, I was impressed how spiritually devoted you were, because you were struggling with problems in your marriage and just a super painful miscarriage and loss of your baby. And, then the identity stuff even almost seemed secondary at that point. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the spiritual journey, because I think a lot of maybe people who are hardcore Christians might say, well, I'm never going to read this. This is ridiculous. Why is Ben telling us to read this book? This is crazy. So,
well, that part of it was really, when I started writing, that was kind of a surprise to me. I started to write the story down and I saw, like, wow, there's a huge religious theme running through here. And this theme of, fear, really just fear of going to hell, fear of not doing all the things right. So I'm a direction follower. I like to follow the directions. I read the directions. And so, but that wasn't working for me. And so it became this pattern of, I just got to do better. I'm not doing something right. And trying to constantly, be good, not go to hell. And so, but then you're not really present in your life and making decisions fully aware. You're just like one track, this is this, and there was no wiggle room to really look at things in any other perspective.
Right.
It has to be this way or it's not going to work. And that brought me in this part 3 that you're talking about, the I Am Broken. It really was a perfect storm of with substances and things that weren't working. I gave up. When you're really doing as much and over and beyond as you can and begging God for help, and nothing's changing and nothing is shifting. It really set me down a road of mental illness. And, at that point, I just gave up, because I'm like, I don't know. I don't want this in my life. I wasn't really thinking about the gender portion yet. I still had really no understanding of that. But I knew something was wrong with me and I couldn't fix it. And seemed that God wasn't fixing it.
Right. Yeah. There were a lot of threads of Job in your story. It just felt like I was reading the book of Job through your experience. And that was fascinating to me. That was a turn I wasn't expecting.
Okay.
So I thought that was interesting. I also thought it was interesting that you came at a lot of it as if God was punishing you for certain feelings you had or certain struggles you had. And that, of course, God was punishing you because you were a woman, but you liked women. And so naturally, God should punish you. And it was interesting because there was such a parallel between what I hear from religious people in their criticisms of LGBTQ folks in your own voice. And I wasn't expecting, it was like you were beating that drum as if you were them. So fascinating to me.
Internalized homophobia. And so it's something that's not uncommon. Talk to other people in the community, LGBT, whether they're gay or it's a gender. But you take all that and you really turn it on yourself. So becomes such a horrible thing. And that was in my brain from the time I was little and understood what the word gay meant.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh boy, that's hell. Like, that's all I feel about it. And so, it's like anything, the way to distract from yourself when you see something that you recognize in somebody else you think is negative, is to get mean.
Right.
And put that distance between you and whatever that thing is that you're fearful of or that you recognize in yourself. And so hate can grow out of that. And I was already, from early on, we talked in other episodes, I was good at self-hate. Yeah. So that seed was already there for a multitude of reasons. So it was just another way, to distance myself from that thing that I thought was really bad, really wrong. So I had to work through that too. That was difficult.
You've experienced firsthand as a transgender man a good degree of hate, and you don't get into a lot. The book kind of ends before some of that starts to occur in your life. That could be a second book or a sequel. But does that give you any sort of empathy for people who are hating on you? Because you, in your own mind, kind of live the exact same religious justification for why you should be hated. Or are you where are you at with those folks?
I love having conversations with people like that. It's kind of, a lot of times it's ignorance. And what I do when I go and I talk to groups at colleges, future teachers, future medical professionals, basically any service profession where you cannot choose your client or your student, right?
Which is a growing portion of our economy.
So I'll go into a setting like that and I'll talk about sort of what does the LGBT community, what does that mean? What does that encompass? I talk about gender and sexual orientation and the differences. But the way I really get through to people, and I've been doing this for a few years and always tweaking it and trying to find the best to really communicate with people, is I have to give them something to relate to. So, and we always come back to being kind. We're humans. That's the commonality. We are both human beings. We both have a dignity just by the fact that we're here, we're breathing. So we have a certain undeniable dignity as humans. And so to bring it to that and to find examples that people can understand and relate to in their life. So, and that's been pretty impactful. So the more I keep working at it and seeing where people start to open up their minds a little bit, then I will tweak the presentation and try to, steer. So I've been doing this for a few years now, and a lot of people just don't understand. They don't understand what it is until you have a conversation. And I welcome those conversations. So I'm always approach it non-threatening. I'm not there to judge anybody or say, you must feel this way, you must feel that way, but to try to lay out the experience. And then I usually don't tell them I'm transgender until close to the end of the presentation. Right. And that's pretty impactful because that's a way for them to see like, oh, I already had some assumptions about this person. They've been talking for 30, 40 minutes and they seem kind of non-threatening, or maybe I've given them something to think about. And then they're like, oh, wow, okay, this isn't what in my head a transgender person is.
Right.
And so there's a lot of things that happen in those conversations, but I really do enjoy, I want to hear what people have to say. So I want to talk about it. That's how you connect.
Sure. Well, let me tell you, I mean, the percentage of the population that's transgender is what, less than 1%. I think it's less than 0.5%, maybe. So it's a pretty small slice of the overall.
It's hard to
population.
say. A lot of people are not self-identifying.
Okay.
So out of fear, people who are not able to live safely, transgender women are disproportionately targeted more than transgender men.
Okay.
And that's kind of where a lot of the ignorance comes in, and what you might hear in the media, misinformation, is usually directed at transgender women. So they definitely have, in my opinion, a tougher road. Really, trans men.
Oh, sure. Okay.
They're the victims of violence and murder sometimes.
Well, there seems to be two, if you want to call them politicalization. I don't even know if that's a word. That might be a George Bush word, but it's the bathroom issue, and then the sports, and particularly if a transgender woman is either competing in men's or women's sports or in a female bathroom.
Right.
You want to speak on either of those, or is that a culture war you don't want to wade into? I don't know.
I love, the bathroom debate is really interesting because, no woman would want to walk into the ladies' room and see me as I look here talking to you today.
Right.
That would be pretty startling.
Right. Sure.
And there are many trans women, trans people in general. I just always say everybody's been peeing next to a trans person their whole life and they don't even know it. That's just kind of the facts of it. So,
sure.
It's just a shame that there's so much fear mongering. A trans woman is not, there are no urinals in the women's bathroom. Hello.
Right. So all the doors closed. Yeah. It's different than,
it's also, a trans woman is a woman. So she's going to go into the stall like a woman.
Right.
And go through the same, practices that a woman does. Right. So there's nothing, same with, but nobody's talking about trans men in the men's room, because that's not threatening, I guess,
right.
Because they see us as women,
sure,
ultimately. So,
well, and the men's room's a bit of a circus. I mean, you line up there's big troughs for some urinals where it's like one common thing. You just shoulder to shoulder. So there's not a lot of privacy in that whole thing. So, but you also commented in the book about how, as you switched over, you were kind of appalled at how bad men's rooms are in terms of the amenities and the cleanliness, and you definitely downgraded on restroom.
40 her, yes.
In terms of that.
There's a and I didn't get to go into a lot of it in the book. Most of it's in the prologue or the epilogue.
Okay.
But I could do a whole other book on really what it's like to find your place in the world as a man when you've been living most of your life as a
That was fascinating. That part of the book for me, like some of the assumptions, like you talked about now feeling kind of white male privilege for the first time.
Yeah.
And how awkward that felt. And you also had a story, I think you were in the grocery store where you encountered a woman and her young child and you were just being friendly, but that, I guess, appeared to be hitting on them or just awkward or uncomfortable for them. And you realize, like, guys can't necessarily engage in the same way that women are able to maybe cross over more people's boundaries. So I thought those were fascinating.
Yeah, so I can't talk to small children, basically.
Right. Yeah,
which, having raised my own kids and
as a
tried to live as a mom and a woman in society my whole life, it's normal practice to have those little exchanges with strangers that are friendly. And that was tough. to realize that this is weird. I have another story that's actually not in the book, but it was sitting in a hospital waiting room. While a friend was visiting a relative, and there was a woman with a little baby who was about the same age as my granddaughter at that time.
Okay.
And I, without thinking, I commented about the baby, and I just was like, kind of in that mindset, and said, "Oh, my granddaughter, it looks about that age. Is your baby about 8 months old?" And she said yes, and then it clicked. Eventually, she was getting really weird, and she decided to walk her baby around, check out the hospital artwork on the wall, which is not interesting.
She was sending you some signals to back off, and
so it's really it's tough to the first time I had a door slammed in my face, leaving a convenience store. So it's like, oh, that's right. Nobody holds.
Yeah, nobody holds the door. Jack does.
I hold the door for anybody behind me, but in general, or being on a job where somebody called me over and said, "Hey, can you move these boxes? We can't lift these." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'll do my best."
Right, but you're not super big yourself.
No, I'm still just 5'2". So I had a little more muscle when the transition from testosterone, but like it was weird to be like, "Oh, I'll just get this entire thing on my own because I am a man, apparently." So but those are always kind of interesting, and then not really having any, you can be a man, and I've always identified and understand that everything in my life has been because I'm male interiorly, but I didn't know how to go into the world as a man. I didn't practice it.
Right. Yeah. It's just kind of jolting, wouldn't you say?
Yes, that is very jolting.
You're late 40s?
Yes.
40s to mid 40s, entering manhood.
Yes. Tricky. And it's, hard conversationally, as you get through the book, you see that I don't really have interaction with men, even living as a woman. I was in a pretty possessive type of relationship and marriage. And so I just, couldn't really have conversations with men, even as friendly conversations. So I'm not a big football fan. I don't, a lot of the stereotypical things that, and coming from the background that I came from, I wasn't ready to hear anybody talk bad about their wife. So I had no interest in that. That was pretty triggering. So
you were more privy to the wives talking trash about the husbands. Yes, that wasn't okay. Yeah, because that's many a book I know, at least in our neighborhood.
Right. So there was a lot of
present company excluded, of course.
There was a lot of shocks that way. And so I'm like, man, and then I'm back to that bias, my own bias, and having to confront my own bias of like, oh, men just suck, and I don't even want to talk to men. But having to go into the workplace and where it's really easy to talk to women, still having to go, okay, I need to check that. I don't want to seem like I'm coming on to somebody, or other people to see me talking to a female coworker and be like, oh, he's definitely trying to hit on her, send any mixed messages. And so that was another thing to navigate in that sense. So it was definitely a mixed bag for sure. So
one of the things I was excited about, and I'm prone to enjoy Hallmark movies, so I like a happy ending. And during some of the dark times of this, I thought we're definitely not going to get a super pumped happy ending here. But we actually did, because there were some moments and exchanges between you and your former spouse that I thought were really touching and heartfelt, and certainly a lot goes on in any marriage that I think we all wish we could do over or do better. But just how gratifying was it to have that moment of kind of healing and reconciliation with your spouse and a little bit with other family members? How meaningful has that been to you in this journey?
It means a lot. It's a part of the healing process for me. So what's not in the book is the years of therapy, really intensive therapy, PTSD therapy that I've gone through, and the work that I've had to do on my end. So to get as kind of the end cap on that healing journey of a few years, to, a year ago, have my ex asked to meet with me and apologize for some things that had happened, apologize for what happened during the stillbirth and the hospitalization. And I was shocked. I absolutely shocked. But, that's still the parent of my children.
Sure.
And so I do have a level of respect, and I want my kids to have good relationships with both parents. and I want to support that however I can, because I want them to be happy ultimately. And I don't want to live my life staying angry about things that were in the past. He's had his own set of stuff, and
Sure.
I don't even at this point know what a lot of that was prior to me, and maybe he's dug into that. I don't know, but I'm just going forward at this point.
Right.
And the book was not to bash him or any other person.
Right.
It was really just to say, things happen, life happens. We all have trauma.
Right.
And when you're in it, yeah, you're kind of making each other's trauma worse to some degree, and you're creating new trauma. But you try to get through it, and I just don't want to stay in that.
Right.
So,
well, and I think in fairness, we're certainly looking at your kind of lens on all the events, but I'm sure it was hard for him seeing you struggle as someone who loved you, and then also, during some of those times where you weren't, like during the hospitalizations, then he's thrust into kind of single parenthood, and that'd be hard as well. So I think it was not equally hard, but I don't want to get into a percentage blame and all that. I think that's well beyond my skill set, but just it was hard on both of you, and I think it was just gratifying to the reader to see that you two were able to reconcile some of that. What about some of your other family members? Your siblings or your parents? How has that process been post-release? Because I know you were nervous about this.
Yeah, I was nervous. Parents had just finished the book just a few days ago, actually. My sister, I don't know that my brother's read it yet as of this recording, but my sister was very complimentary, sent me, a lot of long texts, and complimented the writing, and
the writing was excellent, by the way. It was really top notch.
And my mom, so we had a good exchange. My mom and dad, I saw them, and I got big hugs. They said they were proud of me. And I did go over before the book was coming to them in the mail the day before the release, and they had pre-ordered. And I had a conversation, and I said, let me tell you kind of what this book is about. As a parent, it's going to be hard to read. I didn't want to read difficult stuff that my kids went through, and they were there for a lot of that. I mean, they maybe didn't know the ins and outs of everything, but they definitely struggled, I'm sure, watching, being part of everything that happened in there. So to try to give them a heads up and say that, whatever is in this book is in there for the purpose of telling this particular story, not my entire life story, but this particular story of this journey, this gender journey, religion, like coming into my authentic self. And so, I wanted to assure them that nothing was put in there to be hurtful. That he was really insightful. Yeah, to show that this is what happened. This is the sense I made of it. And this is how it affected the way I thought about things and moved forward. So, and I think that was helpful to them.
Now, I thought the part about your kids and having to come out to your 12 and 10-year-old at the time that you were going to transition, that seemed like a really hard moment for you, and particularly for your son.
Yes, yeah, that was difficult. And coming out is in any instance is difficult.
Sure.
And I had already done this a few times in the book. So, coming out as when I thought I was bisexual for my best friend, and then later coming out when I thought I was gay. And that was in the divorce, coming out to family. So it was not just a divorce. It was divorce, and there's no men in the future. So it was a combination type of thing. And my kids had to understand a little bit of that.
Yeah.
When they were younger, but when asked if they would have a stepdad, I answered them honestly, as I could. And then to come out to everybody again as trans.
Yeah. So you went through it twice.
Yeah. It was difficult. And, it's still, I think about it, and it's still emotional in a lot of ways, because I know it wasn't easy, and it's probably still not easy for any of them. As adults now, even.
So it was in the book, you talked about how publicly they weren't supposed to call you mom, like in a restaurant or in the grocery store, but then privately they could still call you mom And so even that, navigating that for all of you must have been very difficult for a 12 and a 10-year-old brain to be processing that.
And really, that was more of, the bathroom debate was going on. This was like 2015.
Okay.
And so it was all over the news.
Right.
And people were getting confronted outside of public restrooms. Wow. So I told my kids, like, for our safety, don't shout mom across the aisles at Walmart. Like,
Right.
That could be bad for all of us. We just want to get in and we want to shop. And I am still your mom, and I'm never going to make you call me anything but that, because you have a dad. It's not me.
Right.
But, we just need to, let's not shout that so that we're not drawing attention that's maybe unwanted attention. It was hard to ask that of them, and
Sure.
It was hard for them to hear it. So, but in the end, it's, I felt like I was acting in the best safety for all of us.
Well, you shared how there's this struggle for any parent. Do you stay stuck in a particular either marriage or job or just position that is killing you in order to keep kind of status quo for the kids? And you wrestled with that. And I think that's something many of us wrestle with, of like, what do we just suck it up for with our kids and kind of suppress our own urges versus living our authentic selves, knowing it may be hurtful to them? I thought that exchange and that kind of internal dialogue that you shared was really helpful. So
yeah, I think really what sums that up is my oldest son. When I told him I was trans, the one part of his response that I can remember was, he said, "I don't understand it, I don't get it, but I love you. And I want you to be here." So, and he was old enough when the suicide attempts were happening, and he was, unfortunately old enough and aware of all of that was going on. So he wasn't really shielded like the other kids were.
Sure.
So, that was sincere from him. And of course not easy. I can't even begin to imagine what he was dealing with on his end. But, I tried to think that I am a better person and a healthier person, and I can show up better for them as a parent now. And I have good relationships with them. That doesn't mean that they don't still struggle,
Sure.
but
Tricky, but
I do my best. And, if someday they come to me and they want to talk, I certainly don't expect them to read the book.
Really?
So
the kids haven't read the book yet?
No, I think my daughter-in-law is starting it right now.
Okay.
And then she's going to give it a full read. Now,
She'll decide if your son should read it.
yeah, I don't know that he's interested, and that's okay.
I mean, it's tricky because a lot of it has to do with the marriage and it's your side of the marriage, but the dad obviously has their side, and you don't want to. I think as a kid, genetically you're half of each your parents. So if you see one in a bad light, it almost gets into that self-hate of yourself. So you don't want that. So
right, and that was a challenge that I tried to keep in mind through all the writing process was, which as a writer, you're setting a scene. So I'm not supposed to tell you what somebody else is feeling or what's in somebody else's head.
Right.
If I'm writing it well. And so that was actually helpful to me to really just write what I was experiencing.
Right.
And write what I was feeling and what I remember as objectively as I could, as far as other people's feelings. But a lot of that was because I was writing about their parent. So parent is in that book quite a bit. So, and it's painful stuff.
Sure.
And so I certainly didn't want to hurt them in telling those truths. But, I don't know if they choose to read it, they do. They're all adults now. I did send them each a text, and I said, well, here are the chapters that I think are pretty safe for you to read.
Okay.
I would strongly suggest you skip the other ones.
Really?
Because they are
you're either editing and censoring your own book. See, now you've done it, though. When you tell a kid they can't have this, it's like the forbidden fruit. They're going to read those salacious ones right off the bat and just blow the other ones off.
I don't know how much of my parents' stuff I would want to read. So I don't know. It was a lot of things about their relationship, their personal struggles. I don't know that I would necessarily want to read that.
Yeah.
But, I'm certainly trying to give them all the space they need to make those decisions. And, nobody wants to be re-traumatized. So
That hurts.
I definitely don't want to throw them back into that. So
that's a good point. Yeah, makes sense. Well, I also wanted to talk about, so you talk about the kids and this was heavy, but then this incredible relationship you have with your granddaughter and how there was this moment where she kind of came to this epiphany because you're known to your granddaughter's Grandpa Jay, right? So, but then she had this moment at 3 where she was like, Grandpa Jay grew up a woman and played with like dolls. And that seemed just both sweet and like fascinating to me as a reader.
I think it speaks to, we try to shield kids from things like that, but they are so accepting. And for her at that age, she was playing make-believe. Anything is possible in her world.
Okay.
So, and it was that natural stage of saying, to her mom, Mommy, who's your mommy and daddy? And Daddy, who's your mommy and daddy? Those are natural questions.
Sure.
That a kid will be like, oh, you have a mommy and daddy.
Well, you want the family tree in school.
And so, but she took it in stride. She was a little bit like, oh. And my son said, yes, Grandpa Jay used to be a girl. And she said, oh, okay. And then she was on to the next thing.
Right. Zach can play in and not worried about it.
Yeah. So she's awesome. Absolute source of joy for sure.
I was going to say, how good did that feel? Just that moment where she questioned, you don't quite know how it's going to turn out. And then she's like, oh, man. And she just goes back to play. That must have been like just.
It's amazing. And, she just recently got her ears pierced.
Oh, wow.
She's 8 right now. She recently got her ears pierced and she will video call me. And we were talking on a video call and she's telling me about this and showing me some earrings that she was going to eventually wear. And I said something to her. We were talking about the piercing and I said, well, you got to wait. You can't put those in right away. You're going to have to wait a couple months. And she says, how do you know this? So I used to have my ears pierced. Oh, it was like she forgets.
Right.
She just moves on. So, but it's great to have that, that she's so accepting and that's so a normal part of her world. And, I showed up in a lot of her drawings as my former self. So that's one of my favorite memories is my daughter-in-law sending me a text on Mother's Day and saying, well, I got this Mother's Day card and this picture was in it. And I said, oh, is that me? And she said, no, that's Grandpa Jay when he was a girl.
Wow. So don't have that one.
I'm drawing in her Mother's Day cards. We had a great laugh outside. None of my facial hair.
Okay.
And a little halo around my head for whatever reason. So
I think
so it's comical.
Wow. That's awesome. I also thought it was interesting toward the end of the book, you shared how, because a lot of this was a spiritual and religious journey and particularly a Christian journey, and how you had come to a realization. It was a particular scripture, and I can't remember the chapter and verse, but that when Jesus talked about that you will know me by my fruits, and that kind of is something that you continue to hold to. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Listeners.
I think, I have a lot of peace from that. So I can look at this life now and see that, through this transition, I've become far more accepting of other people. More loving, more connected to people in general. So when you're not hiding and setting up all of these lies and things to hide behind, you're really not out there in the world authentically. And it's hard to have authentic relationships when you're behind all of these walls and all of these stories. So to be on the other side and really step into this and realize that I enjoy talking to people, I enjoy meeting people. I feel a genuine kindness and a need to connect with other people and hear stories and have tough conversations. And I have a lot more compassion now.
Okay.
So I look at that and I say, I didn't have that when I was trying to follow all the rules and check all the boxes. And so, the fruit of where I am now this is where I'm supposed to be. So nobody can convince me otherwise. So as a human being, I'm a much better human being all the way around than I was when I was trying to hide and be something I wasn't.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to thank you for, again, laying your soul bare, putting it all in there. This is a fascinating read. Even if you're not a reader, You Only Live Twice by Jay DeFazio, and you can pick it up Amazon or wherever you get your books. So thank you, Jay. This has been an awesome 3-segment podcast. If you have missed either of the other 2, check them out. And all of you, I hope you will continue to live your super pumped life just as Jay is. Excellent.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks for joining me today on the Super Pumped Life podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, I have 2 really quick next steps for you. First, subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube so you don't miss future shows. And second, jump on over to SuperPumped.com, where there are all kinds of great tips and tools for you to launch your super pumped life. Keep well, and I'll see you next time.